Hey guys, welcome to the Sean and Sus show. In this series, we're breaking down one scenario from every NFL division that could break fantasy football. In this video, we're doing the NFC West, and Sus has selected the Arizona Cardinals. So the scenario proposed is, what if Marvin Harrison Jr. is deployed correctly, allowing him to properly break out in 2025 in his second season? So Sus, what do you think of this scenario?
Yeah. How's it going, everyone? It's a pretty interesting rookie season for Marvin Harrison Jr. when we go back and look at it. 880 yards and 8 touchdowns. Not exactly what people paid up for at the 1-2 turn in 2024. However, all in all, it's a pretty successful, objective rookie season when removing those expectations. Um, there were some things on tape that you would have liked to see better from him, getting off the line of scrimmage, maybe getting bodied a little bit, by some more physical cornerbacks. But this offseason, Cardinals offensive coordinator Drew Petzing has acknowledged some of this suboptimal production, yet saying that he's improved a ton this offseason physically, the routes he's running in minicamp, saying that he's capable of stretching the field, playing underneath, playing in the slot, moving around the formation. I've seen some discourse in the space of, well, has Petzing acknowledged anything, that's going to be different this year? He has in some of his little press conferences. He's also talked about making tweaks for this season based on what did and didn't work last year, as well as noticing certain defensive trends that they need to adjust to and taking things from other teams' offenses that they liked. So this idea that Petzing's not going to do anything to change, I'm not really buying it. He's a smart guy. He's respected around the league. I think it's very reasonable to assume that, a pretty reasonably good offensive coordinator is going to put his ascending star wide receiver in a better spot to succeed now that he's seen what he's capable of. This comes off a season where Marvin Harrison wasn't used as creatively, kind of as a sacrificial X receiver. Not the best setup for a rookie. You want to kind of make life easy on him, but they basically threw Marvin Harrison in the deep end and told him to swim. I think we're going to get better usage based on just kind of logically assuming that they would, but also Petzing literally saying that they will. Kyler has also talked about how he wants the Cardinals to be better at off-schedule plays and how the team will be practicing those this offseason. I think that would be great for Marvin Harrison. You get more broken plays downfield, Kyler rolling out and, them not being off base on like what they want to do as they build that chemistry for when things can go left. I think it could work out for them and getting Marvin Harrison some more 30, 40-yard chunk plays rather than just like Kyler throwing it away or scrambling or it going incomplete. As I mentioned, Marvin has bulked up significantly. Cards GM Monty Ossenfort has said he's been putting in crazy work at the facility every single day, first one to arrive. And you can see some of the pictures online. You look up Marvin Harrison Jack. He's looking crazy swole. He's getting up in some of these highlights from minicamp. So he just looks the part, and the team is saying, they're expecting huge things. His teammates are chiming in. It seems like there's smoke and fire here, and last but not least, year two wide receivers just historically perform better than year one wide receivers. There's just natural development. If you've played fantasy, you know that like guys aren't who they are as rookies. Like there's an upward trajectory, especially when you're a top 5 pick like Marvin Harrison. So I think if we get better deployment, a stronger frame, and just the natural improvement as a year 2 receiver, last year's 4th overall pick seems prime for a classic year 2 breakout.
That's a lot of stuff, and it's encouraging from the coaching staff that they seem very confident in him. So I kind of half agree and half disagree. I think the team environment is a bit of a concern where McBride is still the target hog in this offense. They want to run the ball to James Conner. I do agree that coordinators are allowed to change. The idea that the same guy doesn't go into the same building in year 2 and change things, especially things where Marvin Harrison was that number 2 overall pick. They were comfortable taking him over Malik Neighbors, who's a first-round pick. They were comfortable putting that team investment in comparison to any other position, and they want to make him work. It's been the first year of his career, which not everyone starts off super hot like Malik Neighbors or Bowers or Chase or some of these other guys in recent years, Jefferson, that have broken out right away. So there is room for improvement. Now, as a Michigan fan, it does deeply upset me, but unfortunately, Marvin Harrison was actually quite good at college. Now, the rest of the team, I wouldn't agree, but Marv was quite good, so that's great. The line is supposed to be worse from a pass blocking standpoint next year in comparison to last year, where they were one of the best. But if Drew Petzing is willing to use Marv in more creative ways, such as the slot, quicker routes, easier targets, easier catches, that they can get the ball in his hands more quickly. He's good at the catch point. Not as much of a yak guy as you hope, but that's not every receiver. But if they're willing to use him well and get it to him quickly and not have Trey McBride have this monopoly, I think he can break out and lift the whole offense. And what his development would mean for the team is also that James Conner would rise, Kyler Murray would rise, and the whole offense would rise. And the other thing I would add on the Arizona front is that there are Vegas lines that are set for the entire season. Now it's early, we're in June. It's not starting tomorrow, but they're one of the highest projected totals teams. They're in very competitive games against good offenses, and people in this offense have to do well. And why not the former number 2 overall pick that has huge team investment? They took over Malik Neighbors. They have other weapons. And if James Conner can open up, Kyler can open up and find him in these broken play scenarios, then as one ship rises, all other ships can rise. So I'm kind of half with you, half against here, where the Cardinals are going to score points. I'm not sure necessarily if it's Marv, but there's a lot of opportunity and a lot of incentive for the team to get him involved.
Yeah, I'm with you that McBride is definitely the target hog. I expect him to probably still lead in targets this year. But I think there's room for 2 alphas, so to speak, to kind of lead the way without many guys really commanding too many targets behind them. Michael Wilson is going to get a lot of routes, but he's not a real true target commander. Wide receiver 3, Greg Dortch, I don't know. Like they don't really have anyone else now.
He's had his moments, but yeah, I agree.
He's a real, he'll have that occasional 8-target game, but for the most part, he's an afterthought in the offense. They're going to funnel it through their 2 alphas. Now, if maybe they add, like a Keenan Allen type or an Amari Cooper type, that seems more like a long shot at this point. We'll cross that bridge when we come to it. But as it stands today, it seems, like the equivalent in like Cincinnati, with like 2 alphas, or Dallas. You have 2 guys who could really just end up commanding like a significant piece of the pie. And at the end of the day, I think year 2 with Kyler is going to be a bit more fun with this offense. James Conner, now they did really lean on the run late last year, and it was successful for him. So I could see them being more run heavy than I would like them to be. But I think in spite of that, like you said, a rising tide lifts all ships, and the overall offensive pie could grow for this team, which, last year had a lot of disappointing offensive performances, didn't score as many points as some people would have hoped. And so if they just get there this year, he doesn't have to overtake McBride or really diminish Conner. He could just, of the growing slice of pie in this offense, he could absorb that.
Absolutely. And I think another aspect of where Marv's development would really lift up this offense is in terms of the red zone, because Marv has caught deep passes, but he isn't the breakaway long speed type of guy in the red zone. He is a big traditional X, but getting easier routes will get him more involved and more in rhythm, especially as a younger player dealing with more physical corners than he's used to. And the red zone could be the place if Trey McBride is just this yardage hog where he can't score touchdowns for whatever reason, even though we feel his skill set should translate to the red zone. But for whatever reason, he just isn't that guy. And in a run blocking line scenario where James Conner has to be the hero, or it's these Kyler option plays and he's a smaller guy and they don't want to put him in these risky scenarios, having Marv as the red zone guy to really set the table for everyone else would really lift up the offense as well. So we'll see how they prioritize him. I think the offense will be good. We're underrating Kyler a bit. We'll check on the Call of Duty release schedule, but we'll see how real or fake that is. Although there's some people online that really have that down to a science. And in these offensive environments in competitive games, especially down the stretch in the playoffs, they get at Houston versus Atlanta and at Cincinnati. Those are three offenses we think are pretty good, and they can't just try to hold the ball and run out the clock and grind out the clock. And Arizona added some defensive pieces, but we don't know if they're going to be a great defense or not. That's TBD, but they're not someone that people are taking, let's say, in season-long drafts where you're drafting defenses. You're not seeing Arizona come off the board super early.
100%. That's really key to touch on those week 15 to 17 matchups. The Cardinals are definitely a target offensively that, you're drafting today and, you're splitting tiebreakers. You might want to target Arizona in some of these tiebreaker scenarios because they're set up for a big December. On top of that, just circling back to the year two breakout thing, a lot of times we want to say or feel like these guys are known commodities after their rookie season. But, we just learned the lesson last year with JSN where people were a little too excited for his rookie year. He was being drafted way too high. Then he gets bumped down a few rounds last year, comes out, has a pretty great year, 1,100 yards, 6 touchdowns. Marvin is arguably a better talent, I think a lot of people would say.
Yeah.
And he could arguably make a similar leap. And he's starting from a higher point, 888 as his rookie year. He had a better rookie year than JSN. CeeDee Lamb making a similar type of leap. AJ Brown. Like these guys might have a pretty good rookie year. 888 is a great rookie season. It's just not the 1-2 turn. People allowed themselves to get set up for disappointment last year, but you can't hold that against Marv. And especially if we see him bulking up, working on his verticality, his explosiveness, he's getting up in these mini camp videos. And I'm not one of these people who gets so pumped on, mini camp videos, but just seeing a guy look more physically strong and getting higher than he did before, that is objectively good, just heightened athleticism. So I think maybe what we saw last year was a discombobulated Kyler Marv connection. Maybe they get more dialed in this year. It's just instinctual that they would be better in year two than year one. There were a lot of missed connections last year where they were just off on their timing. And I think that could be corrected this year. And, we could get the season that we really wanted last year from a really talented rookie player going into year two.
Absolutely. And the strength part, I think it's easy to think that a wide receiver getting stronger, that means he can't run as well. But I think for the red zone, that's very important, especially if they're going to part of the time he's going to be an X receiver. And I think one of the issues that he had was he couldn't either push off or be strong enough to deal with some of the holds and other things that an X receiver has to deal with on the outside. And the connection will be stronger in year two. And I think that as someone who can handle the physicality as a second-year player, that'll be key in the red zone. And to go back on my Michigan thing, he does get to face Will Johnson a lot in practice, just like they did in the Big Ten. So iron will sharpen iron on both sides, and he'll get better. And some people in this offense have to do well, and why not him? And we're not forecasting a Michael Wilson breakout. And in this offensive environment where they're going to have to score points in order to win games, their games are competitive. They're not really heavily favored or not in most of these games. Like some teams are projected to be really bad. Some teams are projected to be really good. They're kind of somewhere in the middle. They're in a division also with a lot of promising offenses, and they're going to have to hold up their end of the bargain, and they can't just grind it out with James Conner like they did last year. And I really like James Conner, but it's going to have to be other guys. James Conner faced, I believe, the 5th most stacked boxes as a rusher last year, and I'm sure they don't want that to repeat next year.
Totally. And like you said, the division offensively, at least 2 of the teams are for sure going to be better, the 49ers and Rams. Both either made additions or functionally made additions with guys getting healthy again. We'll see about the Seahawks. Maybe Sam Darnold pushes it more downfield than Geno did. Their offensive line's a little bit of a mess, but we'll see on that front. And like you said, that late season schedule, we're thinking about week 17 over here a little bit. That Cincinnati matchup is like so prime for a shootout, with neither defense really seeming to be a strong bet to be elite. So, thinking about keeping week 17 in mind, I want to be targeting pieces of the Bengals and Cardinals passing attacks, and what better way to play it than in each of those cases, the top two elite guys. You could easily see that being a massive game for any of these four, McBride, Marv, Chase, T, and but I think Marv has a pedigree that could leap him, maybe not into the Jamar Chase tier, but well ahead of T and McBride in terms of what he can offer vertically. Now, of course, T was the wide receiver 1 last year. Week 17, not going to diminish his week to week outcomes, but Marv could just go band for band with him.
Yeah, and I think based on that trajectory, I think someone like a Drake London, who was in a complicated offensive environment his first couple of years, very classical X receiver, and Drake London did a lot of his winning work while he was in the slot. That's not something that he did early in his career as much, and that would be the part of Marv's game with a competent passer in Kyler Murray, that they could get him more intermediate and easier targets to win and get him the ball more, and then we could see him be a second round pick. Now, on his downside, of course, there's always the ultimate downside, but at around his price, to be about even to JSN is a pretty solid bet there. And I think the red zone chops in a better offense. It kind of feels like JSN in a better offense to me. It would be the simplest way to put it.
100%. And he has a profile that we saw last year, could put up 25-point spike weeks, couple blown coverages. Marv can really house long touchdowns. A lot of receivers in this league aren't getting 60-yard touchdowns as rookies. Marv can do it. So it'll be interesting to see what he evolves into this year, but I'm pretty bullish on his prospects. I don't think he'll disappoint people as much this year. I mean, he can't, because he's not going at the 1-2 turn, but also I think we're going to get better production overall. So, chat, let me know what you guys think of this convo. Are you on Sean's side where you're a little more in the middle, or are you on my side where you're pretty bullish on Marv? Let us know in the comments below, and hit like and subscribe if you had a good time listening. Have a good one.